Having surpassed 1,000 completed anime, it's time to review my old favorites and find out what holds up. I'm Sacrabolic, your envoy of hope, and this is Anime Favorite Search. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya is about a really average, everyday guy named Kyon who ends up meeting a really weird girl at his school known as Haruhi Suzumiya. And she says she doesn't want anything to do with ordinary people, but she's very much interested in getting to know supernatural elements, like if someone is a psychic, a time traveler, or an alien. However, this is like the everyday normal world, and those things simply don't exist, so most people assume she's absolutely insane. And she also is notably an amazing athlete, she's super intelligent, and she's notably very attractive. Well, she ends up becoming friends with Kyon because he's the only one who can halfway understand her insanity, and she ends up dragging him into forming a club with a bunch of other random people she pulls off the street. Well, turns out that the other people that get brought into this club, the SOS Brigade, are in fact a time traveler, an alien, and a psychic, all of whom are watching her because she seems to have amazing, universe-changing, phenomenal powers, which include being able to block off the time stream, being able to, restructure reality at a whim, and then the psychics just think she's just quite literally God who created the universe 3 years ago. Regardless of the differing opinions, the point is, 3 years ago, she fundamentally altered the structure of the universe and is blissfully unaware of that. And the three groups want this to keep happening, that she's completely unaware of this, and they enlist Kyon's help to basically satisfy her and prevent her from destroying the universe, which is something made abundantly clear that she can definitely do, and it would not be hard, and she would probably do it on accident, which comes up at several times, actually, throughout the course of the series. Haruhi is a classic series, and it was incredibly influential on the landscape of anime and manga and light novels. I think the light novel series itself has actually just stopped updating, crazy enough. Apparently, the author is just, not interested in keeping the series going. And they stopped producing the anime because Japan doesn't like to change voice actresses. And the voice actress who voiced Haruhi had, a huge scandal where she was fucking her bandmates. And that's it. That's the whole scandal. It's the most nothing burger thing ever over here. But Japan, apparently, it's a big deal. I don't fucking understand it. Anyway, the disappointing thing about Haruhi is because it hasn't really had an entry since the movie, no one really talks about it anymore because a lot of the older schooled anime fans are starting to get drowned out by people who've been, hopping in on, Demon Slayer and during COVID. So I've been hearing more chatter about it lately. I've even heard that they might pull in a third season, which I would be down for. It's been so long, but I do know that KyoAni's also sort of moved away from the series because they like to only deal with their own first-party stuff. None of this really matters. The point is that Haruhi has 3 different watch orders, and I have always been a very stalwart defender of the original broadcast order. I always insist on watching in broadcast order, and I totally intended to do it this time because broadcast order was not chronological order. And I intended to do it this time, but the problem is I was watching this on Crunchyroll, and that was my fault. I should have just gotten less lazy, grabbed my fucking Blu-ray copy, and watched it that way. But I watched it on Crunchyroll, and they have merged Season 1 and 2 together and put the entire thing in chronological order. So I had to find an episode list to figure out what was Episode 1, what was Episode 2, and then what order I was supposed to be watching in. And I fucked up on the order sorting, and I ended up watching in what was known as DVD order, which is basically just chronological order, except for you watch episode 11 first. So, fucking whoopsie. By the time I realized the mistake, I was already too far into it, and it was just well, fuck it. I'd have to start all over. So, yeah, this is the first time I've ever watched in what was pseudo-chronological order, and I have to say, it is just so much worse than broadcast order, and I will continuously defend broadcast order as the best order. I don't care that broadcast order is confusing. That's part of the fun. That's what makes Haruhi such an interesting series, is that it's so fucking confusing. You are gonna later call me a hypocrite when we get to Monogatari, but don't worry about that for now. But yeah, and it's also worth noting that when you watch in chronological order, the show basically ends on what I would argue is the weakest episode of the entire series. And that the most climactic episode that sort of recontextualizes the relationship between Kyon and Haruhi happens like midway through the show. So I definitely think it's an inferior order. That said, I had a fucking blast watching this. The only difference I would say now from the previous times I had watched this outside of the lackluster order is I do think my tolerance for Haruhi being an absolute entitled bitch is a lot less now than when I was originally watching this show. But even then, I still don't dislike her character. I still like the cast. Kyon is still the best, and I want him to narrate my life. I love his little snide mental remarks. It's got a lovable cast. It is sort of like a comedy series, functionally, where it is a bit episodic, but sometimes they dive more into the episodes. It's basically about like Haruhi's reality manipulating shenanigans, getting him into situations and then having to get out of them. And through these reality manipulating shenanigans, we do find out that like inherently Haruhi isn't a bad person. She just sort of puts on this front. And a lot of it is her sort of covering up her insecurities and just sort of like not necessarily being honest with herself and her environment, while just trying to do the best she can to make the universe entertaining to her when she herself is like so disappointed in it. And I think there's a lot to be said about the character of Haruhi and her interactions with her classmates and the other people in the SOS Brigade. And I can easily see it being grating to people. But I do enjoy the exploration of the character and its like central focus. And Kyon is like one of my favorite characters in any anime. So even though it doesn't go as strong into the romance angles and the comedy angles as I would normally go with other series, but I think it blends all of these elements well enough and like strong enough that I think the end result of this show comes out very, very good, very strong. And I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that I still totally vibe with this show, and it is almost certainly going to continue being one of my favorites. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye-bye.